And hello, welcome back. Here we go. Here we are. Here we go. Whatever. It's the US. We don't care about grammar. We don't care about the metric system and whatnot. Let's get into the setup and see how do we tackle Circuit of the Americas. Not exactly the favorite track for me, but at the same time, it's kind of challenging. It's quite technical in Sector 1 and in Sector 3 as well. You have to carry the momentum from one corner to another. So, it's not just about being as fast as you want to be on the S's, it's also about carrying the momentum from the start of the S's all the way to the end of it and then down into the hairpin. So, again, a lot of time left on the table there. Not exactly the most amount of time spent practicing here. Traction, as always, is difficult. It's kind of exaggerated in this track because of its low, well, not say low grip, low speed nature of this track, where there are a lot of traction zones. And game being game, traction is kind of difficult. So let's take a look at what setup that we have over here. So we have a 3730 wing setup, a bit lower than quite a bit lower, four rear wing lower than the world record setup, and for a good reason, because you want to be able to at least defend on the straight, which is the main pit straight, and then also the back straight, which is the longer one. These are going to be your two main overtaking opportunities throughout the track, and having a bit lower rear wing just helps to achieve that top speed. You don't really notice the time loss from increasing the wings in time trial. That's one thing. And also when you're in a race condition, in a qualifying condition, when you have Hotlap enabled, you don't really lose that much time. So, well, you don't really notice it. But when you go into a race condition, yeah, behind someone's slipstream, you get DRS, and then you will get a bit more top speed with lower wing. So 3730 is where I settled for it, and I don't think any lower is going to be helpful because you're going to lose a lot of time in sector 1 and 3. Now if you can carry more momentum in sector 1 and 3, you are much quicker than everyone, or you're matching everyone in sector 1 and 3, then you can probably drop one or two more clicks and then see how do you perform. If not, just go back to this. You should be okay. ERS again is going to be difficult, so be mindful with your ERS expenditure there. Transmission, this is also something modified from the world record setup. 53 off throttle. It started off at 50, which was quite a bit unstable, especially into the slow speed corners in sector 3. Now the reason I raise it up to all the way up to 53 incrementally is because of the lower rear wing. So this is going to cause instability when you have when you reduce your rear wing or you increase your front wing, so you're creating more gap in the aero performance. You're creating more oversteer. So to balance it off, you can always increase your off throttle. 53 seems to be a good balance here, for me at least. Then again, skill issues, you never know what's good or what bad until you try it out. On throttle, the differential, again, it's personal preference. The lower you go, the more rotation you get on acceleration. You don't want to go 50. 51 is the lowest you should go in all tracks at any condition. 52 seem to be just nice again in terms of giving me rotation and some acceleration, forward momentum. 53 also felt fine. Otherwise, you can always settle for 55, which is the default for all tracks, all conditions, like I always say. 60 is also usable. You can use this in the race instead. And yeah, for qualifying, you want it lower so that you can rotate your car more under acceleration. Suspension geometry, right, left, no changes to this. I did play around with the red toe as usual to find if I'm gonna get any more performance out of it for the rear to be more stable or not. It didn't really help because it did help a little bit on the exits, but it gave me so much more sluggishness understeer on the rear, and it lost me a lot more time. So I just prefer to be a bit slow on the exits, just a few thousandths, but in the corners the car is much more agile. Suspension, and this is something I have increase the stiffness of the front suspension and anti-roll bar also, to make the car a bit more bearable in the high speed corners. And also in general, the car is a bit more stable with the amount of direction changes that we have: left right, up down. All those can cause the car balance to be affected. Similar to Portimao, I've done this as well. I've increased the stiffness so that the car is a bit more balanced in this change of direction. So started off at 2-1, 2-1. You always want to leave the rear at 1 to be more stable on the rear. Front suspension, I just raised it up to 4, felt just nice. Anti-roll bar raised up to 6, also felt just nice. If you get a bit of entry understeer, you want to reduce that, either increase your front wing or you can go down on the front suspension. And likewise, let's say you have a bit more understeer in, let's say, turning the car mid corner, you can always go down on your anti-roll bar, but be mindful, reducing this too much may cause you to have oversteer on acceleration instead. So yeah, play around with it and see where you want to start off. And again, suspension, this suspension page is all going to be personal preference. You may have the same wing setup as someone, but running their suspension may not exactly be the quickest way. So you have to find what is going to be good for you, what is stable for you. And yeah, front ride height and rear ride height 7.4 is exactly as the world record setup, so I've left it there. I did try 5, 8.5, 9.6. It all gave the same result, so I just prefer to have it as it is, a bit lower, so it feels a bit more planted that way. I did try 4.4, 5.4, 6.4, but the car felt a little bit unstable. So 7.4 was like just nice balance combined with this suspension and everything else in the setup. So again, if you get a lot of understeer, you may want to reduce the front ride height. Conversely, if you have oversteer and let's say high speed corners, or while taking the SSA, you got tons of oversteer, perhaps you can always raise this 1 click or 2 click and see if that solves the issue. Otherwise, you have to look at other parts of the setup. Brakes 150 as always. Turn 1, you can actually use 51%, and that will help you to stop the car a bit easier, because it is an uphill corner. When it is an uphill corner, there's more weight to the rear, which means you can always increase the front brake bias to make sure the rear doesn't snap out under heavy braking. But in this game, 50, 51, I'd say either way is just fine. In the race, definitely consider using 51. If your red tires are starting to wear out throughout the lap, you can use 51, you'll be fine. Tire pressures, COTA, high downforce, high speed corners, low speed corners, high load corners, whatever you want to call it, it just shreds the tires. Tire temperatures are pretty high here. Tire wear is also pretty high, hence why you see the setups are pretty high downforce here in USA. And you want to start off with minimum tire pressures, and in the race, if in your race practice you feel you can take a bit more temperature, maybe just 1 or 2 clicks. But if your tire carcass temperatures are already around 92, 93, 94, around that, under 95, 96, around there, you should be fine for the whole race. The only thing is, if you add rear pressure, it kind of adds stability to the rear as well, but it may also cause a bit of oversteer if your setup is already oversteering to begin with. So you have to be careful. Increasing the tire pressure sometimes helps, sometimes doesn't help in terms of stability. And there you go, 3730 is the setup for the wings. 52, 53 transmission. You can use 57 through the MFD, set it back to 55 or 60 in the race. You can always start lower or higher if you want. Suspension geometry, no changes. Right, left as always. Suspension 4.1, anti-roll bars 6.1, and then ride height is 7.4. 150 brakes, 51 for turn 1, or 51 when your tires are starting to wear out a lot more. The rear tires are starting to suffer. And tire pressures start off at minimum. You should be safe in all conditions in the dry. Now for the wets, you definitely want to go higher downforce than this, because these corners become so treacherous in the wet. You want to go at least +5 for the intermediate conditions, maybe +6 on the front, because it tends to get a bit more understeery. So you want, if you add 5 on the rear, you may want to add 6 on the front. And likewise, you know, if you are going to the pits and it's changing from from wets to dries, you may want to reduce your front wing because you get a lot more grip in the dry tires. Full wets, maybe you can go something like this, very high downforce, because it's close to impossible to overtake around here in the wets, and yeah, in the dry it's somewhat doable. So yeah, there you go. And if you want to take a look at what the world record setup is, and let's just have a look. I don't know, some of this is pretty much the same. So 37, 34 was where we started off. You can also try this. It's gonna give you a bit more drag on the straights, but throughout the corners, if you need more confidence to take the corners, then high downforce might be your way. You will be vulnerable on the straights. That's the only downfall of it. 58 was the on throttle. 53, anything works, basically, all personal preference. Again, off throttle, again, it's personal preference. You can increase it to increase stability as well. Geometry, no changes. Suspension, you know, like I said, 2-1-2-1 is pretty soft. It gives you a lot more front end grip, considering this setup has a lot more rear wing, so you're gonna get a bit of understeer, and to counter that, you reduce the suspension, and anti-roll bar gives you a bit more front end grip. Yeah, pretty much the same. Time trial, rear pressures are always maximum. This is not practical for a race condition. In time trial it works because it gives you stability, increases the rotation, best of both worlds basically. But in a race you're not going to be using high pressures because they're going to overheat your tires. And there you go. Setup is all done, and let's quickly yeah, it's pretty bad lifetime to be fair, but let's just save it before we forget. And yeah, see you guys next time for the final setup, which is going to be the track closest to my home, well, closest to Malaysia. That is going to be Singapore. So yeah, let's see how we can tackle the longest, the toughest, well, not the toughest, but the longest street circuit on the calendar. Take care everyone, stay safe, and oh yeah, no camera, yeah, camera ditch, bye bye.